Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today, we've got another video for you in our museum content series. We're going to talk about the plans for the Navy Museum during World War II. President Franklin Roosevelt was a well-known fan of the United States Navy, and he always intended to open a National Navy Museum in Washington, D.C. And planning for this got pretty far along before his untimely passing. As it is, there still is no National Museum of the United States Navy. The Navy has a curators branch called Naval History and Heritage Command, and they operate a number of museums around the country. So here's a map of their various museum locations. But much like the Army and the Marine Corps have national museums, the Navy does not. Secretary of the Navy Brightwaite, who was the Secretary of the Navy in 2020, announced that there would be a National Navy Museum, probably somewhere in the DC area. So plans for that are still very much under construction, and when completed, will mark the end of 70 years of planning. So in today's video, we're not going to talk about that because we don't really know what the Navy's planning at this point. We're going to talk about this original plan, very much developed and spearheaded by Franklin Roosevelt. First of all, important to establish that the first permanent museum ship in this country didn't start until 1948. That was the Battleship Texas. Other historically significant vessels had been preserved, such as the frigates Constitution and sloop of war Constellation, and the screw frigate Hartford. But these vessels were active commissioned vessels being used as offices and training sites and whatnot by the Navy, and occasionally open to visitors. They weren't strictly museum ships, although Constitution and Constellation have since been turned into museum ships. So Roosevelt's plan would have essentially made the first permanently standing museum ships. In the 1920s, the Battleship Oregon, the most famous ship arguably from the Spanish-American War, was turned into a museum ship in her home state. And she operated as a museum up until about 1942, when the state gave her back to the Navy to use as scrap metal for World War II. So the concept of the museum ship arguably dates back before 1948, but in practice, it hasn't really been a modern thing until 1948 with the Battleship Texas. So Roosevelt wanted a big museum somewhere on the Anacostia River, and with this museum, he wanted 5 museum ships. Now, a number of you guys have talked before about how you wish all the museum ships were in one place, or that there were large collections of museum ships. That's the most feasible way I can think of to group a bunch of museum ships together, particularly museum ships that have high maintenance needs like the ones that Roosevelt was thinking of. So along with his original traditional landside museum, the 5 ships that Roosevelt had in mind were Constitution, Constellation, Hartford, which was Farragut's flagship during the attack on Manila Bay and which was still around into the 1940s and 50s, Olympia, and Oregon. Later plans, as Oregon was scrapped, would have brought in instead a 4-stack destroyer, of which none now survive, but that's a very iconic World War I era warship. And so Roosevelt's plan would have included ships from the Quasi-War, the Barbary Wars, the War of 1812, straight up into the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, and World War I. That makes a pretty neat and compelling collection, although old and in need of maintenance. None of those ships are as large as an Iowa-class battleship, but having 3 wooden ships, a pre-dreadnought type battleship, and a pre-dreadnought type protected cruiser does give you a lot of maintenance issues. And like I said, as Oregon was scrapped, the idea of a destroyer came in. I think that's pretty cool to have a couple different types of ships: a sail-powered frigate, a sail-powered sloop of war, a steam-powered frigate, a destroyer, coal-fired battleship or protected cruiser, as the case may be. Like that is a compelling collection of ships that shows a history over time. Probably this collection would have continued to grow, and I could easily see a World War II era ship, maybe even Enterprise, saved for a museum like this. And then as the country fights more wars, I could see other ships saved to be added to this collection. Unfortunately, like I said earlier, Roosevelt died and the idea died with him. He had been actively working on this, and the cruiser Olympia had even been taken into dry dock in preparation for her move to Washington, D.C. when Roosevelt died. And that was the last time Olympia was dry docked, and she was already out of service, so there was no reason to dry dock her except to get her ready for this museum ship. So Roosevelt was making progress. He did plan to do this in the post-war world. What's compelling about Roosevelt's museum is that he planned on having ships from all across the country's naval history in one place, not multiples of the same kind. And there is an argument to be made that if you're telling a story of the entire Navy or some coordinated stories, there are some multi-ship museums like Stewart and Cavala in Texas at Seawolf Park. They're telling the story of submarines and anti-submarine warfare together with multiple ships. That's a compelling story and a good reason to have multiple ships. Telling the story of the whole U.S. Navy is a compelling story and a reason to have multiple ships. There are a couple of multi-ship museums out there you can visit, but none of them are trying to tell the whole story of the U.S. Navy. What ships do you think should have been saved for President Roosevelt's Navy Museum to cover all of American naval history? Let us know in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State and also from a number of private businesses and individuals like yourselves. And in particular, the support we've gotten from viewers like you has allowed us to make the YouTube channel a larger part of our jobs. And over the last 18 months, we've been able to go from making 1 video a week to making 5 videos a week. We really appreciate the support, and if you'd like to keep helping us, there's a link in the description below. Another way you can support us is by clicking the like, share, and subscribe buttons so that other people hear about our channel. And it'll also let you know when we're putting out all this new content. Thanks for watching.